Bill, when we finish the discussion.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, having the discussion at least gave us an opportunity to talk about, like, the idea of using this survey to feed back on your own teaching and to help you decide what you're going to work on the next semester, and the differences between the types of questions that are asked on this sort of survey and a final. So, you know, most physics finals look very similar to something like Steve teaches. But like, you know, most of the faculty's finals look very similar from semester to semester, but they're not testing the same things with these surveys.
Yeah, and from my perspective, since I occasionally have this conversation one-on-one with a professor who I'm trying to get them to use the conceptual diagnostic, I much preferred to have it in the group setting where it was other faculty members responding to them, not just PER.
It wasn't just PER
people, or it wasn't just me, giving the PER party line. Like, it was sort of everybody discussing why this might or might not be useful. So I was very happy that we had that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so this is the kind of things we talked about. And actually, as the facilitator, I think on purpose let people go off on tangents sometimes. Like, this was a tangent compared, like, this idea of utility of creating the post-test was a little bit of a tangent, and we spent maybe half of the meeting talking about that instead of, picking out topical learning goals. But a lot of times I thought these were almost as productive as picking out the topical learning goals.
Yeah, and I remember the first, meeting in the summer, we went in thinking we were going to talk about these overarching learning goals, but it was the content division that the faculty really wanted to focus on then. I mean, that's...
Right, it was more contentious in
bit
this
more
case than it
tangible.
was in E&M. In E&M, we very quickly conceded that the textbook defined the content, but we did not have that consensus in this
Right.
case. So.
And we also went around about whether or not we should split it up again or keep it together or change the emphasis between math and physics and math. And so they had some good discussions about that. And in the end, decided to keep it together, but that wasn't at all clear at the beginning what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm just reflecting on the differences in the process, and you have multiple meetings with weekly intervals in between. This is obviously something that took time, and it seems like faculty had a chance to reflect on the process and the goals. It's not, I think from our naive perspective, we wanted faculty to do this in the span of a 2-day or 1.5 day meeting.
No, I think
You
the
were
process
in, though,
rather than
with
an
some
outcome is really,
discussions
really
prior to
important.
that.
But they weren't, I don't think faculty had a chance to sort of get these things discussed, bring up their own concerns, and then have time to really, as a group, reflect on the process.
I think that's a very good point, because in our department you'd have people teaching these upper division courses, and you'd want them to have time to think about what intro was teaching, right? And it's not something you want to do right off. If you're forced to do it right away, you'll just reflex.
Yeah. Maybe I'm seeing more of a difference than is really there, but it's just striking me.
Well, there definitely was a process.
Yeah.
Process.
And I think it encouraged attendance to some extent. I had a couple of faculty members that told me anything more than 1 hour every other week was too much. That, so that's sort of, I picked 1 hour every other week. Because I had a few faculty members tell me they would come to that, but they wouldn't come to something that was a bigger commitment than that.
And I also noticed that Rachel had an agenda for each meeting, and we essentially never accomplished the full agenda, but the meeting ended. It was, 1 hour was done, and we stopped. And in fact, there was one extra meeting held at the end, I recall, because we decided we really weren't finished.
Right, we hadn't made it through all the topical learning goals, so they were, we said, should we just get back together, or should we do it by email?
And this was already near Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and they said we could get back together. Yeah. Right, so that's most of what I wanted to talk about. Like, I had another discussion, like I wanted to have more time for discussion of what people might want to do in their departments. So I thought maybe we could talk about other things your department would want to discuss or did discuss in such meetings. But I also, I'm happy to discuss whatever you think would be the most productive question to discuss. And I have more questions too. Yeah.
I just wanted, I think I have developed a reputation for being very negative in describing things that have gone on. So I just wanted to describe something much more positive that falls under the same general area. And again, I think it reflects the observation that it's easier to achieve some of these things in upper division classes or majors where faculty really have a strong investment. I got together with a colleague of mine, decided to submit an NSF career proposal and put as part of this proposal a little project that involved transforming an upper division physical chemistry course. And so he then brought it to our physical chemistry division meeting, and he insisted that we needed to decide what our students need to learn. And what he had as his, his threat was, I'm a junior faculty member. All is implicit. I'm a junior faculty member. You're responsible for helping me to succeed, and this is how I'm doing it. And all of a sudden, there was this tremendous investment. We had that discussion that was so hard to have with these lower division courses where people were not committed. And I just throw that out there as a mechanism that you may be able to exploit, because these NSF career proposals are very prestigious and they always require a serious education component, and that's something you can tackle. It's a great way to get junior faculty involved.
So that's very interesting, because I don't think anyone in our department has ever had one of those. Because there are other ones in the biological sciences, like Searle and Pew and things like that, which people get. But that's a very interesting point.
But so that's another thing, is departments at major research universities are deeply invested in the success of their junior faculty. And if you can find some way to tap into that, you've got a powerful,
great idea.
Powerful handle.
But just for point of information, we have, I guess, our second most recent faculty member, maybe most recent, has an NSF career grant, and he has peer instruction and clicker use in the graduate realm as his educational component. And you probably know more, Seth, because he's worked some with you on it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that's a pretty powerful thing, I would agree. So far, we haven't used him.
I wonder if the,
promote departmental discussion.
Well, it sounds like some of the SCI should even be willing to advise people who are writing those awards.
Yeah, they have. We have in our department.
That's great. Because
We
I know
have
for a
something-
Searle and a Pew, I mean, they don't care.
The
But-
PER group.
Yeah, actually, I also wrote Niles a letter for that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
See, but that's really good, because those departments, those are
And-
very prestigious awards.
Carl wrote a letter of support for this proposal, as did I.
We have a comment over on this side.
Well, I have mainly a question, which is it's a how-to-do question. And so we have a situation where instead of a bunch of faculty rotating through, which gives them sort of ownership of and wanting to be part of the solution, we have situations where you sort of assign two faculty, or they assign themselves to teach in alternative semesters, and no one else really buys in at all, and there's no incentive to buy in. And so I guess the question is, how do you make that community happen where everybody feels ownership for a learning goal development?
So the course feeds into other courses, and you presumably have a sequence of courses where one course is applicable to another. So maybe that's I agree that changes the character of the conversation if the 9 people in the room aren't all sort of anticipating teaching that particular course. But if 6 of them aren't going to teach the course, but they're going to teach the course that follows, or one of the 3 courses that follows, maybe that's the handle, is rather than focusing on the course, it's the outcomes of the course.
Yeah, we've done the unfortunate thing where we've removed all sort of prerequisites for courses to increase the flexibility of students to move through a major in their own chaotic way. And so there is no sequence.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes is right. There's a pedagogically sophisticated approach.
Well, we actually tested whether or not there was an effect of having a previous course on the outcomes of the current course, and there's absolutely no effect.
That could be read in
There are
ways.
multiple conclusions to draw from that.
There's data that could be interpreted a number of ways.
Yeah.
Let's just stick with one way of interpreting.
That can't possibly be true if any course is effective.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's part of the
it
facial
depends-
evidence.
What are your goals?
Courses aren't connected.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
depends on the degree of connection between the courses.
But you
There
would
there are quite a few good papers by Lawson who says reasoning ability is your top determining factor for your students, and prior course knowledge doesn't have anything to do with performance in biology.
But you wouldn't argue that an effective course wouldn't help somebody's reasoning ability. I mean, it seemed to me that if you had a really good course, their reasoning ability would improve. So even if it was content neutral,
And there are
should
courses.
be an improvement.
There are courses that do that.
You're
It
right.
works incrementally like that. Yeah.
Well, maybe-
you would hope so as
You,
teachers.
you would in some ways, yes.
So maybe like specific course learning goals aren't the thing that would unite your faculty to have a discussion. Like maybe it would be more like whole major learning goals or something like that. Like, 'cause our faculty have discussed a little bit how some of these learning goals are really what we want after the whole physics major.
Has
you
that
know?
happened?
Have anybody? I don't think we've had a discussion like that.
What's the
We got as
question?
All
close as,
major learning
I mean, when we
goals.
were talking about these same learning goals in the new course content.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Well, does
So
physics
one
find
thing that came up,
up
in this set of meetings when we had stepped back to work on the sophomore level class from the junior level class was that people realized that we collectively need to sort of look at the entire major. So people wanted to talk about this. They wanted to talk about setting up learning goals across the curriculum so that we knew when things were happening and what the sequence should be. But I don't think the conversation really went anywhere, but there was definitely a strong sense that we want those conversations to happen in the future.
Yeah, and we made some decisions in our meetings about what goes where and how it connects together, and they really wanted to make sure that this is broadcasted somehow, which we haven't done yet.
Right, people kept saying, okay, so we've delegated this topic to Physics 3 and that topic to Physics 7. How are those faculty members going to know, and are they going to keep doing that?
I mean, when I look at goals 8 and 9 here, these are even beyond major level goals. These are sort of like career level goals, you know, your entire education.
Right.
So I have a question just about physics and maybe about chemistry. So my impression of physics is that it plays a part at the end, right? So that there are people who specialize. Well, there's specialized types of physics, right? So there are people who are different. So in biology, there would be physiology people, there'd be ecology people, there could be.
That flaying doesn't really happen until graduate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you think so? Physics as an undergraduate major is coherent.
I mean, there are 3 elective courses
Some
for
people take some
physicians.
seminars and stuff, but.
Yeah,
But-
so in your
it's
senior
pretty
year,
core.
you could start to take some specialty courses
Okay.
that are rather disconnected, but they're all connected to the previous year's.
So you have a fairly coherent goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.